The following program is sponsored by New York Priority Medical Care. Now it's time for The Laws of Your Money, a weekly call-in show with legal tips to help you protect your money. Here's your host, Ann-Margaret Carrozza.
Hello and welcome to The Laws of Your Money. This is a program dedicated to protecting you from legal and financial mayhem. When it comes to personal finance, I believe that the single most important element is legal protection. Because what does it matter how diligently I save or how brilliantly I invest if there's a greater than 40% chance of losing assets to a long-term illness, an expensive divorce, taxes? This can be capital gains taxes, estate taxes, not to mention ordinary lawsuits. We all know that we're living in a very litigious society, but it comes as a surprise to a lot of people, an unwelcome surprise at that we are far more likely to be involved in a legal dust-up with a former loved one than with a stranger. So we're going to dive into all of the ways that we can protect ourselves and our assets legally. I am Ann-Margaret Carrozza. I'm an asset protection attorney, and I am joined today by my esteemed guest co-host and sister, attorney Lori Miles. Welcome to the program, Lori.
Thanks, Ann. It's great to be here.
Welcome back to the program, I should say. You've been on the show before. So today is June 8th, and we are in the beginning of wedding season. And, you know, I talk about in the book, Love and Money, that it's a disappointing statistic to me that the average cost of a wedding in the United States is over, can you guess, Lori?
$15,000?
Yeah, it is over 15. It is over $24,000.
Wow.
And I just think, you know, you're a young couple, you're starting your lives together. Who wants to be in a mountain of debt? You know, for people who can afford it, terrific. You know, I love going to an over-the-top wedding with a band and an open bar. But for the folks who cannot afford it, I really hope that more and more people rethink, you know, this first step in their lives together. Now, I think one thing that you and I have in common, Lori, is that we both had maybe unconventional wedding celebrations, and we were able to save some money. So, you know, what was something that you did that you don't necessarily see at other weddings?
Well, I would say the first thing I learned from you, and that's there's no reason to invest in a wedding planner. If you're an organized person and you have a spreadsheet, you can absolutely manage the details yourself.
Well, I wonder, is there anyone out there who is a wedding planner, or do you know a wedding planner who can reach out to me through Instagram at my lawyer Ann? I wonder if a wedding planner is not able to negotiate discounts because of their relationships with vendors, you know, but in any event, I didn't have a wedding planner. You didn't have a wedding planner. You had a fun wedding. It was over the top in terms of creativity. Your wedding cake was what?
It was a Rice Krispie treat wedding cake.
A Rice Krispie treat wedding cake. It was terrific. And the centerpieces, they weren't flowers, they were
lemons, and that was another aspect of our saving money. We decided to forego flowers and centerpieces and flowers for the bridesmaids even by having lemons in a vase as the centerpiece for each table. And then each of our bridesmaids had a bucket with artificial flowers that cost us about $5 a piece.
Terrific. Now, one of the things that I did, which was very unconventional, and I must admit, many years later, I do have mixed feelings about this cost-saving measure, and people who know me know that I am sometimes a little bit of a cheapskate, but I insisted that we not hire a professional photographer. And I thought it would be absolutely brilliant to throw some disposable cameras on every table. What I didn't factor into this brilliant analysis is that many hours into the party, with lots of liquor having been consumed, that when we developed the pictures, I have close to a dozen pictures of wedding guests' private parts. So I don't know where I was during the ceremony where people were taking the disposable camera. And if you have any information on this, Lori.
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. But that sounds like a great bonus wedding gift.
Well, we did save the pictures. I don't know why. They're certainly not in the wedding album. I just, at some point, I wish people would confess to having done that. But anyway, financial issues, ironically, are one of the top two causes for divorce. So why do we want to start our married life under a mountain of debt, right? Coming home from the honeymoon to a bunch of credit card bills in the mailbox. It's just not good. So, you know, they say when money is a problem, everything is a problem. And it doesn't take long before the financial stress hurts the marriage, and it is the leading cause of all divorce. Joining the program to weigh in on this and other issues regarding a divorce is a longtime friend and colleague of mine who I have had occasion to refer friends and refer clients who are embarking upon a divorce. Welcome to the program, Dana Friedman.
Thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you so much for being with us. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and I don't want you to give me a lawyer answer. So this is the $64,000 question, or is it?
Before you ask, I'll tell you right now, I did not have a wedding planner.
What is someone looking at in terms of legal fees as they divorce?
Well, that's a question that I really can't answer in its entirety, and I'll explain why. There are multiple facets that make up any divorce case. The first of which being, is it going to be a contested divorce or an uncontested divorce? Contested, of course, means that the two parties can't agree on either one or multiple facets, and that requires judicial intervention, going to a court, having a judge evaluate the case, both sides giving testimony, and that's dependent upon time, how long it takes. But there is a solution to that, and I know I'm giving multiple answers to one question. Divorce mediation can limit the amount of that expense and the amount of time incurred. Of course, the flip side, of course, is if the parties agree on all of the different facets of the divorce, a stipulation can be drafted, an agreement where both parties sign as to spousal support, child support, custody, visitation, whatever the different issues are. Once that's drafted, then it's just a matter of drafting the uncontested divorce documentation for the court submission. That's significantly cheaper, probably somewhere in the neighborhood, depending upon the different points of it. You're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500-ish. Could be higher.
Dana, let me ask you this. Way back in my misspent youth as a state legislator in 2010, we passed no-fault divorce in New York State. And New York State was the last state in the United States to have no-fault divorce. Do you know, Dana or Lori, do you know what the first state was to have no-fault divorce? It's a fun fact.
Nevada?
No. You would think. Dana?
I was going to say Nevada as well, because I remember my father as a trial attorney flying out to Reno to do the divorces.
It was California, 1969, and it was signed into law by Governor Ronald Reagan. That is a fun fact that I keep hoping it's going to be on Jeopardy, but it hasn't yet. So have you found, Dana, that the passage of no-fault divorce magically fixed things in New York State? Or is it your opinion that if two parties want to fight and want to attack each other, they can still find a way to do that?
Well, I think that it has helped matters considerably. It's made the grounds and the basis for the divorce a lot easier. Once that issue is out of the way, I think that parties are more apt to agree to the different financial aspects of the divorce.
Interesting. Now, I guess I just have a little public service announcement to the many parents out there who have, quote unquote, loaned money to a child going through a divorce, because the legal fees can be exorbitant. It's very important to think about how you want to deal with this in your estate plan. If you have given one child $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for legal fees in a divorce, how, if at all, do you want this reflected in the estate plan? Do you want this forgiven, or do you want to give that amount to the other two children off the top so that everyone is treated equally before they go on to divide the estate? So there's no right answer, no wrong answer, but I can tell you that there will be differences of opinion between and amongst the beneficiaries as to, whether all of this help to a child going through a divorce should be reflected in the ultimate estate distribution. And a related issue as it relates to the estate planning tangent of divorce is how we deal with a child's spouse within the estate plan. So most of us who have children leave the estate equally to the children. But how do we want to deal with the tragic situation where a child predeceases the parent? Should their 1/3 of the estate go to the child's estate, which is going to be to his or her spouse? Or do I want to have the ability to put my hand back in the till and give that share to my grandchildren? Why should they be punished for having had the bad luck to lose a parent? And this emphasizes the importance within your estate planning. When you do a trust, you want to make sure that you have retained the ability to go back in there and change the beneficiaries when life happens. Okay, Dana, back to you. Do you recommend that everyone about to be married have a prenup?
I do recommend prenuptial agreements. If you don't draft one prior to the marriage, you can always draft a postnuptial agreement. Not as common, but it's often done. The agreements can dictate what the finances would be in worst-case scenarios, usually by percentages, but can be for a specific amount. A prenup does save a lot of aggravation in the long run.
Yeah, and I think, there's this thought out there that a prenup exists solely to protect the wealthy party, right? But if the prenup is too one-sided, it runs the risk of being invalidated for being unconscionable, right? Dana, if you have all of the money, I have no money, and I sign a prenup saying you get to keep everything that you have and I walk away with nothing, that prenup is on faulty ground in the event that a party wants to challenge it. So I have clients say to me, I draft a lot of prenups, and they say, well, why should I even do a prenup? I hear that they can be invalidated. Well, they can be invalidated for very specific reasons. If it's done too close to the wedding, there's a presumption that there was duress on the party who was kind of browbeaten into signing it because the wedding invitations had already gone out and there was an element of force in there. If the parties share an attorney, you might as well not even have a prenup. This is not the place to save money. Each side needs to be represented by separate counsel. And again, we don't want the agreement to be too one-sided, and we need to make sure that we disclose all of our assets, or the party, later contesting the prenup can say they were not aware of the rights that they were giving up. Dana,
if I could just add to what you were saying, one party should not pay for the attorney for the other party.
Or even recommend an attorney for the other party. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But everything you said was spot on.
Yeah, good advice. Do you have any advice, Dana? I think we all know people in our lives who are in an unhappy marriage, and for whatever reason, they choose temporarily or permanently to stay in this marriage. It could be religious reasons. It could be that they want to stick it out until, the children are, fill in the blank, until they leave for college, until they go to high school. So if you have checked out of your marriage mentally and psychologically, do you have any legal tips for that individual?
Is a legal tip?
Yeah, I mean, let me give you an example of something that I would tell someone in that situation. If you are sort of cohabiting with someone and the relationship is irretrievably broken, I would change my logins on social media, right? I would go and delete any potentially compromising images on shared devices. If there are any amateur videographers out there, you might want to delete those potentially compromising images.
And
yeah,
right?
I would also want to change my advance directives. Do I want this person making life and death medical decisions for me in a hospital setting in the event that I am unable to speak up for myself? So maybe I want to change my healthcare proxy so that my spouse is no longer making the decisions for me. Rather, my sister Lori is going to make the decisions for me. Same thing with a power of attorney. And those are some things that I would recommend folks think about if they've mentally checked out of their marriages.
I would also recommend keeping copies separate and apart of any important financial documents, copies of tax returns, 1099s, and things of that nature, because you may end up needing that at some point to prove asset distribution.
Absolutely.
You said, for example, about powers of attorney. You can't just tear up a power of attorney. It has to be revoked in a certain fashion, and notice has to be sent to whomever the power of attorney has been presented to. So you have to do things the right way.
Exactly.
And an attorney can obviously handle that for you.
Now, let's turn to second marriages. If there is a cohort out there who desperately needs to think about doing a prenuptial agreement, it's folks entering a second marriage. Do you know, Lori and Dana, what the divorce statistics are for second marriages?
Oh, they can't be great.
They're not great, no. Over 60%. So my question for you, Dana, is have you ever represented a client in more than one divorce?
Yes. Not often, but yes, I have.
Do you give them a discount on the next one?
Well, now I'm now a licensed mediator, matrimonial mediator as well.
Oh, that's great.
So I've kind of steered people towards the mediation process because it's generally quicker. Sometimes it can actually be longer, but generally quicker, but usually more inexpensive. And people are more often happy with the mediation than the standard divorce process.
Dana, that's really amazing. I did not know you were doing that, and I will definitely refer folks to you. But, with a second marriage, we tend to be older, so we have fewer working years ahead of us from which to financially recover from a, financial blowout in the event of a divorce. And we also want to insulate each other from long-term care costs, right? Because spouses are legally responsible for each other's long-term care. And over 40% of us will need some help down the road with activities of daily living, the cranky functions, that come with living longer. We are all more likely to need help with feeding, bathing, dressing, toileting, and Medicare and the Medicare supplement do not cover this. When we leave a hospital, they cover only the first 100 days in a rehab. Beyond that, in the area that we live in, the rehab costs can be in excess of $16,000 a month.
Wow.
So, they say that love is lovelier the second time around. Maybe, but it's also a lot more complicated. And maybe I want to know that my soon-to-be golden bachelor spouse has made plans for his long-term care, that he possibly has long-term care insurance, or that he has insulated his home that we're both going to be living in within a properly drawn asset protection trust so that the federal 5-year clock is under his belt, and we don't have to worry about any nursing home putting a lien on the property. And we also want to prevent blended family warfare later on, right? If we have adult children from prior relationships, chances are they're going to dislike each other, right? Chances are that my adult children will dislike my new spouse. And maybe they can keep a lid on it during my life, but we need to revisit the estate planning as we think about a second marriage. So, Dana, if you and I are living in a house that is in your name, and I'm saying to you, oh, please put my name on the house too, I'll always take care of your children. That's not really a good bet, because in my experience in the estate planning world, the surviving spouse in a second or subsequent marriage does not, in fact, take care of the adult children of the first decedent. And I think, right? I think it's a very common mistake out there to say, I give my husband, Fabio, lifetime ownership in the property, and then it will revert upon his death to my children, Mary, Susie, and Johnny. That is a huge mistake that seems kind of appealing at the outset. But what if Fabio's in a nursing home? My kids can't enter the house to pick up their baby pictures because he is technically still alive. He could move to Florida and rent the property out, and he's going to be getting the rental income. So, this is another example that I encourage all of you out there. I know you all have wills. Many of you have trusts, but revisit them and ask, is this really taking care of the fault lines that we all have in our lives? I want to change the conversation from who gets my stuff to how are they going to get my stuff. So maybe within the trust, I say, upon my death, if Fabio and I are living in my house and no separation or marital dissolution proceedings shall have commenced as of the time of my death, then he has the right to continue to occupy the property until the earlier of his voluntary departure, his death, his permanent stay in a nursing facility, or his cohabitation with an unrelated person. If he met a new person, let them go live at her house. So those are some tips that I hope people think about. Dana, do you have any final advice for folks thinking about a divorce, and how can they get in touch with you?
Okay. First off, I can always be reached. Am I allowed to give out my office number?
Please.
I'm not sure. Okay. My office number is 212-964-6622. We're located in Lower Manhattan. We've been here since 1946, so it's a long-term office.
Wow.
Also, we can also come to visit clients at their home or a location that's most convenient to them.
No, Dana, thank you so much. And listen, folks, if you're driving and you weren't able to write down that number, please reach out to me during the week and I can put you in touch with Dana. And you can shoot me a message through my website at myassetprotectionattorney.com. Dana, thanks so much for being with us. Hope you can be on the program again.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Take care, Dana. So, Lori, do you have any tips once we are divorced? How can we save some money? And you had a great expression about living a full life with one half of the resources.
That's right, Ann. So for myself, post-divorce, one thing that I was really careful to do is keep the money a fun conversation with the kids rather than attaching my guilt to half the assets moving forward, really making it a game and teaching the kids to save. So I linked all gifts for the kids to their saving plans, to their chore chart for which they could earn allowance money. And every time they asked for something, turning those wants into a saving plan and a game. So it's really changing the narrative from we don't have enough to how do we make this work in a fun way.
That is amazing. And I think the single most important thing that we can do with our kids when it comes to money is saying no, right? If we give them whatever they want when they're asking for it, they don't have the joy of delayed gratification.
And right? earning something and feeling proud of it.
Feeling proud of it, feeling empowered, and changing money into a positive narrative. Lori, thank you so much for joining the program again, and I hope you will be back soon.
Thanks for having me, Ann.
Have a great day, everyone.
The preceding program was sponsored by New York Priority Medical Care.